First contact. Earth is not what we expected. The alien ship hovered quietly above Earth's atmosphere. It was smooth, dark, and shaped like a sharp blade. Inside the ship, Commander Vurak stood tall, his 4 yellow eyes focused on the blue. "Planet below. Primitive world," he said, his voice cold and sure. "No space defense, no warning beacons, should be an easy conquest." The crew nodded. They were part of the Zorath Empire, known across the galaxy for destroying weak planets. Earth was labeled a death world by the Galactic Council. Dangerous weather, wild animals, toxic plants. Yet somehow intelligent life had survived. A young alien officer, Zoran, looked confused. "Commander, why do death world species survive longer than others?" Vurak grinned. "Because they are violent, but also unstable. That is why we conquer them first." He pressed a button. A small screen lit up, showing a human man on a tall cliff. The alien crew leaned in to watch. The man smiled, spread his arms, and jumped. "No!" gasped Zoran. "He's falling!" But just before hitting the rocks, the human opened a parachute. He floated gently to the ground, laughing as he landed. The alien stared, horrified. "Did he enjoy that?" one asked. "He jumped on purpose," Vurak said slowly. "To feel alive." The crew remained silent. They had seen many strange species, but none that smiled in the face of death. 2 alien scouts were sent to Earth disguised as humans. Their skin was pale and rubbery, their speech strange, but they passed as tourists. They arrived in a busy city, blending into the crowd. Near a tall building, they noticed a crowd cheering. A group of humans ran upstairs inside the building. Minutes later, they ran back down, sweating and laughing. "Are they training for war?" one scout asked. "No," the other said. "It's a fun run." Fun? The aliens couldn't understand. The humans were tired, hurt, and hungry. Yet they smiled. They took pictures. They high-fived each other. The aliens recorded the scene and sent it to Commander Vurak. He watched in silence. Why would anyone suffer for fun? Later that day, the scouts walked near a fire station. A loud alarm rang. Firefighters rushed out, jumping into a red truck. "An emergency," one scout whispered. They followed the truck to a burning building. Flames rose high, black smoke filled the sky. Without hesitation, the humans rushed inside. "Wait," the scout shouted. "They'll die." But the humans came out minutes later, carrying 2 children. The crowd clapped. The firefighters looked calm, tired, and proud. The scouts reported back to Vurak again. They run toward fire. They risk death for strangers. Vurak stared at the screen. Madness. That evening, one scout walked past a building with loud music. Curious, he stepped inside. It was a gym. Inside, 2 humans were fighting inside a cage. Fists flying, blood dripping from noses. A crowd cheered them on. The scout gasped as one fighter was punched in the jaw and fell to the ground. The other helped him up. They hugged. The scout whispered into his communicator, "They fight." "And then show respect." "Leave at once," Vurak ordered, but it was too late. A young man walked over. He smiled. "Hey, you new here? Want to spar?" The scout nodded, confused. 5 minutes later, he was lying flat on the ground, seeing stars. The humans laughed and helped him up. "You're tough," the man said. The scout limped away, confused and afraid. Back on the ship, the crew watched recordings of humans eating spicy food until their faces turned red, camping in forests full of bears, swimming with sharks, and jumping out of airplanes. Zoran shook his head. "Commander, they are not scared of death." "No," Vurak said quietly. "They chase it. They make it part of their lives." He stood up and turned to his crew. "We thought we were hunting prey, but we have found something else." He looked at the blue planet again. Earth is not what we expected, and the humans are not weak. Observation turns into fear. The scout, named Zoran, sat in silence inside the alien ship's observation chamber. His hands trembled slightly. He had returned from Earth just hours ago, bruised, shaken, and confused. Vurak, the alien commander, stood over him. "Report," he ordered. Zoran looked up. They are not normal, Commander. I have seen Deathworlders before, but humans are something else. They do not fear death. They dance with it." Vurak narrowed his eyes. "Explain." Zoran's memories played on the ship's screen. The first memory showed a woman, small and thin, standing alone in a storm. Lightning flashed behind her. She wore a helmet and a yellow jacket. A tree had fallen across the road. "She was a rescue worker," Zoran said. "She walked into the storm to cut the tree and save others, alone." The footage showed the woman pulling a heavy saw from a truck, then slicing the tree bit by bit, soaked and shaking. "Why not wait for the storm to pass?" asked a crew member. Zoran didn't answer. The next memory was worse. Inside a burning house, smoke filled the air. A small child was crying in a corner. A human man, coughing and crawling, reached the child and covered him with his jacket. Then he walked straight into a wall of fire, carrying the child. "He knew he might die," Zoran whispered. But he smiled before he went in. The crew watched in silence. Commander Vurak looked grim. "They run into death as if it's a friend." Back on Earth, the second scout, Krell, was still blending in. He had taken a job as a janitor inside a human hospital to observe their reactions to injury, disease, and fear. What he found disturbed him deeply. A man walked in, bleeding, from a deep wound in his leg. Blood poured onto the floor. Instead of crying, the man pulled out his phone and said, "Bro, look at this cut. I look like a horror movie." The nurse, instead of panicking, laughed. Krell thought, "They are not in pain. They are entertained." He followed the man into the emergency room. The man looked around at others. One man was missing a finger. Another had a broken arm twisted the wrong way. A woman sat calmly with her leg in a cast, reading a book. Nobody was crying. Nobody was screaming. They were joking. Krell recorded it all. Later, outside the hospital, a man in uniform sat alone, staring at the sky. Krell approached him and asked softly, "Are you in pain?" The man looked up, smiled sadly, and said, "Pain is part of life. You don't grow without it." Krell walked away, shaking. That night, he sent a message to Vurak. "Humans feel pain, but they do not break. They grow stronger. That is what makes them terrifying." Back on the ship, Vurak reviewed more data. There were videos of humans climbing, freezing mountains for no reason, footage of people swimming across oceans, people jumping from airplanes, walking on fire, and eating poison-level spice for fun. Another scene showed a soldier crawling through mud, exhausted and broken. A voice yelled, "Get up!" The soldier stood and screamed, "I am not done yet!" The crew shivered. "This is not normal," one whispered. "They train themselves to suffer," another said. Later that night, Vurak called an emergency council with his officers. "We came here to conquer," he said, "but I now believe we must observe longer." One officer disagreed. "Commander, their weapons are primitive. Their technology is low. We can crush them." Vurak shook his head slowly. "It is not their weapons that frighten me. It is their minds." He showed a final clip, a funeral. A young boy stood over his mother's grave, tears on his face. Then he looked up and said, "I'll make you proud, Mom. I'll keep going." "No anger, no hate," Vurak said. "Only strength." The room went silent. These humans do not give up. Even in sorrow, they move forward. Even in pain, they joke. Even in fear, they fight. He turned to his crew. "How do you conquer something that never surrenders?" Meanwhile, Krell was making one last observation. He had been invited by a group of humans to watch a movie, a horror film. At first, he was excited. He thought it was human war footage. But it wasn't. It was a film about monsters and ghosts. As blood splashed across the screen, Krell gripped the seat tightly. Humans around him were laughing. One even said, "That's nothing. You should have seen last week's movie." Krell ran out of the theater, terrified. In his final report, he wrote, "They do not fear monsters. They create them for fun." Back on the alien ship, Vurak stood alone looking down at Earth. He now understood the truth. Humans didn't survive the death world because they were strong. They were strong because of the death world, and worse, they liked it. He turned off the screen and whispered to himself, "This planet may not need defending. It may already be the most dangerous place in the galaxy." They bond through pain and struggle. Commander Vurak stood in the war chamber of his ship, staring silently at a glowing 3D map of Earth. Around him, his officers murmured. The latest reports were disturbing. Their scouts had spent weeks observing humans, and still, they understood nothing. "They laugh at danger," one said. "They run toward pain," said another. Vurak's eyes narrowed. "There's something deeper, something they're hiding. We need to know how they survive each other." He tapped a button. "Begin Phase 3. Drop Krell into a combat zone." Krell, the second scout, disguised himself once again as a human. This time he volunteered for something called a boot camp. He thought it was military training. He was wrong. It was hell. Day 1 began at 4 a.m. Loud whistles, shouting instructors, mud everywhere. The recruits were pushed to their limits, crawling, lifting, running, screaming. Krell fell to the ground multiple times. A human soldier grabbed his arm and pulled him up. "Come on. We don't leave anyone behind." Krell stared at him. "Why help me? We are not allies." The soldier smiled. "Out here, we all are." Later that day, the group stood in freezing rain. Cold water poured from the sky. Their clothes were soaked, their hands shaking. But instead of crying, the humans started singing. A terrible off-key song, loud and proud. One voice shouted, "If we're gonna suffer, let's make it fun," and they did. Krell couldn't understand it. Why were they singing in misery? Why were they laughing through pain? One woman tripped during a run, sprained her ankle and limped the rest of the way. The others clapped for her when she finished. "No, one left behind," they repeated. Meanwhile, on the alien ship, Zoran reviewed new footage. One scene showed a broken-down car on the side of a highway. Within minutes, strangers stopped to help. No one knew each other, yet they acted like family. Another clip showed a man crying on a park bench. A woman sat beside him, offered tissues, and said nothing, just stayed. "Strangers offer support without gain," Zoran whispered. Commander Vurak watched over his shoulder. "This is how they survive," Vurak said quietly. "They struggle, but not alone." Zoran added, "They don't just endure pain, they share it." Back at boot camp, Krell reached the edge of collapse. His muscles burned. His bones ached. He sat under a tree, ready to quit. Then a hand reached down. It was the same soldier from earlier. He knelt beside Krell. "You ever hear of a man named Terry Fox?" the soldier asked. Krell shook his head. He lost his leg to cancer, then ran a marathon with one leg, for other people. He didn't quit. Krell didn't reply. The soldier continued, "We don't quit either. You got 2 legs, get up." And somehow Krell did. He finished the training. Not alone, but lifted by those around him. He reported back to the ship. Humans do not grow strong alone. They become unbreakable together. But something even more disturbing was happening. Another alien spy, posing as a student in a human university, joined a classroom project. The group failed their first attempt at building a machine. They laughed. Then they worked all night to rebuild it. "Failure," the alien wrote, "makes them closer." He shared another observation. He watched 2 humans argue, shout at each other, red in the face, but then they apologized and hugged. In his world, arguments led to war. Among humans, arguments led to trust. He ended his report with one sentence: "Even conflict makes them stronger." The final moment came during a street protest. Thousands of people stood in the rain, shouting for justice. They held signs, some cried, some stood silent, but none walked away. When the police arrived, Some humans stood between the crowd and the officers, not with weapons, with words. One old woman stepped forward and said, "You are not my enemy. We bleed the same." There was no violence. There was silence. Then the officers stepped back. Commander Vurak reviewed the footage, stunned. They fight with hearts. They protect with unity. They lead with emotion. He stepped away from the screen and whispered, "They are not a species, they are a storm, and every drop is connected." Later, in his private chamber, Vurak opened the Deathworld classification file for Earth. He added a note: threat level, unmeasurable. Reason: humans do not fear pain, they make it their language. And in that language, they write loyalty, love, and war. As Krell left Earth, he looked back one last time. He saw a group of children falling off their bikes and getting back up. He saw a firefighter smiling after saving a stranger. He saw two soldiers, scarred and limping, holding each other up as they walked away from battle. He whispered to himself, "This world does not break them. It teaches them how to bend, then stand stronger." And that was the moment Krell knew. The Zorath Empire had made a mistake. They hadn't found prey. They had found something terrifying. The human mind is a battlefield, the warship of the Zorath Empire floated silently in Earth's orbit, its crew restless. Commander Vurak sat alone in his chamber, watching the footage of humans once more. Not of their weapons, not of their wars. This time, he watched their faces, their reactions, their minds. "These creatures," he whispered. "They cry, they laugh, they scream, but they keep moving. Why?" He turned to his officers. "It's time. We can't understand their minds by watching from space. We need to test them. We begin psychological warfare." The room grew still. "Target their minds," Vurak ordered. "Break them." The Zorath's most advanced AI machine, KEL-9, was designed to simulate fear. It could create illusions inside a subject's brain, draw out nightmares, amplify trauma, cause confusion and collapse. No species had ever resisted KEL-9 until now. The first test subject was a human soldier, taken during a simulated accident on a remote road. KEL-9 scanned his memories, found his worst fear: being alone in the dark, forgotten. The illusion began. He stood in an endless hallway, lights flickering, his family's voices calling and fading. He was barefoot, bleeding, lost. The AI whispered in his ear, "You are alone. You are nothing." But the man smiled. Then he laughed. "You think this is scary?" he shouted. "You've never seen my student loan statement." KEL-9 paused. Confused, the illusion deepened. A black shadow rose before him. His childhood nightmares. The soldier took off his jacket and said, "Finally, I've been waiting for a fight." Then, he walked toward the monster. KEL-9 shut down the simulation. Result: subject immune. Displays humor response to trauma. Commander. Vurak stared at the report. What kind of creature laughs at its own nightmare? The second subject was a human woman, a disaster survivor. KEL-9 recreated the moment of her loss. A collapsed building, trapped, no help. Darkness. She sat. Still, the AI whispered, "No one is coming. This is how you die." She closed her eyes and whispered back, "Then I die fighting." Suddenly, she began crawling through the rubble. The simulation adjusted. Walls closed in. Heat rose. Her heartbeat spiked. She started singing, softly, calmly, a lullaby. Even as the ground shook, she sang. KEL-9 hesitated. It had never recorded calm singing under maximum mental stress. Result: subject shows emotional override of fear. Vurak read the result aloud. They're not just resistant, they control fear. Frustrated, the aliens increased the pressure. They captured a group of human prisoners. This time, no illusions, just observation. For 3 days, They were isolated in cold cells. No food, no comfort, but the humans did something the aliens hadn't predicted. They told jokes. One man drew a smiley face on the wall with his own dried blood. Another gave fake interviews, pretending he was a talk show host. Welcome back to Human Suffering Hour. I'm your host, Starving Steve. Even the guards couldn't stop watching. The humans began talking about the worst things that ever happened to them. But instead of crying, they laughed. One story involved a house fire, another a car crash. One had been mugged, but somehow they joked about it, and then they said something even worse. I'm glad it happened. It made me who I am. Vurak stared at the footage. These creatures, they turn pain into purpose. They transform trauma into strength, into connection, into identity. Zoran whispered beside him. We've been trying to break their minds, but their minds are already built from broken pieces. The final experiment was never supposed to happen. KL-9 accidentally activated a simulation inside one of the alien officers, a young Zorath scientist who had studied human behavior. For weeks, he saw what humans see: a hospital hallway, a child dying, a parent holding their hand. No words, just presence. Then a whisper, "Be strong for them." The Zorath officer screamed and collapsed. KL-9 shut down. Result: alien minds vulnerable to human emotional patterns. Risk extreme. That night, Commander Vurak stood before his crew. No species has survived KL-9. Not even we could. But the humans, they didn't survive it. They changed it, bent it to their will. He took a deep breath. They are not mindless brutes. They are emotional weapons. The screen behind him flickered, showing news broadcasts from Earth. Humans crying over war, then rebuilding. Humans at funerals, then hugging. Humans falling apart, then standing again. They feel everything, Vurak said, and that is what makes them unstoppable. He turned to his crew. They don't run from pain, they wear it like armor. They don't avoid fear, they invite it. They don't fear the battlefield, because their battlefield is within. He looked at Earth one last time, and it is a battlefield we cannot win. The hidden power of community. The Zorath warship drifted silently through Earth's orbit like a shadow watching the light. Inside, the crew moved with caution. Something had changed. Fear. Not of human weapons, not of human armies, but of something they still couldn't define. Commander Vurak paced the command deck. His glowing eyes dimmed with thought. We failed to break their bodies. We failed to break their minds. Now we test their structure, their command system, their unity. We will divide them. Zoran, the scout who had studied Earth's pain, stepped forward. Commander, humans don't have a hive mind or shared consciousness. Their loyalty is impersonal. Exactly, Vurak said, and that is their weakness. He turned to the crew. If we isolate them, they will break. The plan was simple. Zorath agents created small disruptions across human cities. Rumors, panic, fake warnings, whispers that others were dangerous. That help was not coming. Divide them, confuse them, isolate them. It worked on every species the Zorath had conquered, but not on Earth. In a quiet neighborhood, a storm warning was broadcast. People prepared for chaos. Supermarkets emptied, streets cleared. But then, one family opened their door and invited strangers in. Another began cooking food, not just for themselves, but for anyone who passed by. A teenager stood in the middle of the road holding a cardboard sign. Free blankets. Stay warm. Stay human. An old man gave away batteries. A child passed out sandwiches. The Zorath agents watched from the shadows, confused. Why are they helping strangers? One asked. They gain nothing from this, another said. Zoran, monitoring from orbit, whispered. They don't help for gain. They help because it's who they are. In another town, the Zorath triggered a power outage. They expected fear. Instead, people came out of their homes with candles and guitars. They told stories under the stars. One family hosted a barbecue for the whole block. A young woman told her, "Neighbor, it's times like these we remember what matters." The Zorath officer watching the event trembled. This is not normal behavior. They should be afraid, but they weren't. They were singing. In the capital city, the aliens tried something bigger. They launched a fake emergency broadcast. The government has fallen. You are on your own. Panic lasted 10 minutes. Then the opposite happened. People formed groups. Doctors stood in parks offering help. Cooks opened their restaurants for free. Volunteers appeared, directing traffic and helping the elderly. A child lost in the confusion was picked up by a stranger. "Don't worry," the woman said gently. "You're safe. You're with people." The child looked up. "But I don't know you." The woman smiled. "You don't have to. We take care of each other here." The Zorath spy who heard this began to shake. He sent one line back to the ship. "They do not organize out of fear. They organize out of choice." Back on the ship, Vurak reviewed hours of footage. He saw no leaders, no orders, and yet, unity. "They act like a network," he said, "but no one controls it." Zoran replied slowly, "It is not a system, Commander. It is a feeling. They connect through emotion." Vurak stared at him. "That's not military. That's madness." Zoran shook. His head, "No, that's humanity." Then came the event that changed everything. A building collapsed in a remote town. Before emergency services arrived, hundreds of people were already digging with their bare hands. They didn't wait for help. They became help. One man's hands bled as he pulled a stranger from the rubble. When asked why he did it, he said, "Because they would have done the same for me." Another person yelled, "We are all we have." And the crowd replied together, "Then we are enough." The Zorath drones recorded every second. The footage reached the Zorath homeworld. There, scientists, generals, and rulers watched and felt fear. Commander Vurak stood in silence as the ship's lights dimmed. He finally spoke. "They are not individuals, they are threads in the same rope." He turned toward Earth. "And every time we try to cut one loose, the others pull it back." Zoran stood behind him. "What do we do now, Commander?" Vurak didn't answer, because in that moment he knew. Humanity was not a species held together by law or orders or fear. It was held together by something stronger. Choice. The choice to help. The choice to care. The choice to suffer with others rather than survive alone. And you can never conquer what chooses to stand together. Not with fear, not with lies, not with war. Their unity is not commanded. It is earned, offered, and freely given. They are not weak because they are emotional. They are strong because they are connected. Humanity is not a chain. It is a heartbeat, and no empire can stop a beating heart. The Deathworld mindset. The control room aboard the Zorath warship was silent. No alarms, no movement, only a growing sense of dread. Commander Vurak stood before the central console. Behind him, officers whispered nervously. They had seen what humans could do in the present. Now they would search the past. "Begin full historical analysis," Vurak ordered. "We must know how they became this." Zoran hesitated. "Commander, their records span thousands of years. Are you sure?" "Yes," Vurak interrupted. "Show me what made Earth a death world, and what made its people even worse." The screens lit up. The first recordings came from ancient times, wars with swords, blood, fire, and screams, empires rising and falling, mass starvation, plagues, a world of chaos. And yet, each time it collapsed, it stood up again. The Great Fire of London, a city in flames. Humans rebuilt it, the Black Plague, millions dead. Humans survived it. Floods, earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, tsunamis. Humans adapted. Zoran stared at the screen. Most species would be extinct. But the humans endured, and not just endured, they grew stronger. Then came the age of machines. Factories belching smoke, children working in coal mines, Men dying just to build something bigger. The Zorath watched with horror. They poisoned their own skies, said one officer. They destroyed forests, killed species. Why? The screen showed cities rising, railroads, airplanes, electricity, medicine. They sacrificed everything, Vurak whispered. One video showed a man in a wheelchair saying, "I have lost much, but I still have purpose." Another, a mother with missing limbs holding her child and smiling. Zoran's voice trembled. Pain is not a wall for them, it's a stepping stone. Then came the darkest chapter, world wars. Not one, but two. Trenches, gas, firebombs, nuclear fire. The alien stood frozen as the screen showed mushroom clouds rising into the sky. Zoran whispered, "They burned themselves to end a war." Vurak asked quietly, "Did they learn from it?" The screen showed protesters marching, survivors teaching peace, nations building coalitions. Some did, Zoran said, but not all. They still fight, but they also remember. One line from an old speech flashed across the screen. Those who forget the past are doomed to repeat it. The Zorath had no such saying, because their past had always been erased. Vurak watched footage of genocides, slavery, cruelty. He waited for something to break him, but then came the stories of those who stood against it, people who walked into danger unarmed, people who faced hatred and responded with courage. One man stood before tanks. One girl wrote in her diary while hiding from death. Humans didn't just survive evil. They fought it, often alone, with nothing but hope. The screen flashed forward to more recent history. Disasters, shootings, disease. And yet, humans holding hands in hospital rooms, firefighters walking into collapsing towers, strangers shielding strangers from bullets, children smiling in ruins. Zoran stared at one photo, a girl missing both legs learning to dance again. He whispered, "Their history is not a tale of survival. It's a record of defiance." Suddenly, a silent file opened on its own. Not human-made. Not requested. A transmission. A voice. Tired. Quiet. Full of wisdom. It was a human speaking into a camera during a war. "They bombed my house. They killed my family. But I will not hate. Because hate is easy. Love takes strength. Even..." Vurak sat down. This wasn't a species, it was a fire that refused to die. And Earth was the furnace. Final analysis began printing from the ship's AI. Planet name, Earth classification, Death World, level red environmental threat level, extreme species. Threat level, unmeasurable unique traits, emotional weaponization, trauma-adapted evolution, collective memory of suffering, repeated recovery from extinction class events. Conclusion: humans are not shaped by kindness. They are sharpened by chaos. Vurak stood. His voice was dry. They should not exist. But they do, not in spite of their world, but because of it. Zoran asked, "Commander, what do we do now?" Vurak turned to the stars. They are not monsters. They are not machines. They are something new. Something born of fire, raised in storms and taught by tragedy. He paused. They have learned from everything, Ridam, even their own worst moments. They have become the thing we fear. Zoran nodded. They have the Deathworld mindset. And the most terrifying part, Vurak said, is they wear it with a smile. That night, the warship locked all weapons, engines cooled. In silence, Commander Vurak made the first Zorath command of its kind. We will not invade. We will not provoke. We will watch. And we will remember. Because the Zorath now understood, you can invade a world. You can burn a city. You can silence a voice. But you cannot conquer a mindset born from fire, loss, and hope. And that's what Earth had given its children. Not just a place to live, but a reason to fight. For each other. Always. Retreat from the monsters of Earth. The stars above Earth were still. The Zorath Empire's war fleet, 20 ships strong, floated in high orbit, silent and waiting. Commander Vurak stood at the helm of the lead vessel, his eyes narrowed. His voice was calm, but hollow. "We've watched long enough," he said. "It's time to test them. One last time." His officers hesitated. Zoran stepped forward. "Commander, we know what they are, what they've survived, what they can become." Vurak didn't turn. "Yes, but until we face them, we'll never truly understand." He activated the invasion code. Ships began to descend. Across the Earth, strange lights filled the skies. Shadows moved above the clouds. People looked up. Panic should have followed, but it didn't. Sirens wailed, but cities didn't fall apart. Soldiers didn't run. Civilians didn't scream. Instead, they prepared. In a forest near a small town, the first Zorath drop pods landed. Metal doors hissed open. Black-armored invaders stepped out, tall, sharp, emotionless. They were ready. For chaos, what they saw instead was stillness. A dozen human volunteers stood in their path, unarmed. One of them, a middle-aged man with gray in his beard, raised a hand. "We know who you are," he said, "and we know why you're here." The lead Zorath raised his weapon. The man smiled. "Go ahead, but know this. Every time someone like you comes here, we don't break. We grow." A small girl beside him, no older than 10, added, "You can't scare us, we live here." The Zorath paused. Why weren't they running? At the same time, elite Zorath strike units entered an urban city. They expected resistance. Instead, they found a neighborhood already barricaded, not by the military, but by the people. Firefighters, grandmothers, students, strangers, working together, calm, focused. One alien fired into the sky to scare them. A teenage boy responded by filming the scene on his phone. "You're gonna be famous," he grinned. When asked if he was afraid, the boy simply replied, "Afraid of what? We've already lived through hell." In the mountains, a Zorath unit was trapped by a blizzard. Before they froze, they were rescued by humans, skiers, who pulled them into shelters, built fires, and gave them food. When asked why they would help an enemy, one woman said, "Because that's who we are, even if you're not." Commander Vurak watched it all unfold from orbit. Confusion turned to fear. They don't follow logic," whispered one officer. "They don't need orders to fight. They don't need leaders to resist," Zoran added softly. "And they don't need weapons to win." Then came the final blow. The Zorath sent their deadliest unit, the Mind Cleavers, into a prisoner of war camp, designed to tear into thoughts, shatter memories, and break spirit. They entered the human cells. Inside, they found the prisoners, laughing, telling jokes, playing a card game. One soldier with a broken arm grinned and said, "We're having fun. Care to join?" The Mind Cleavers tried their mental weapons, but they bounced off. One human yelled, "Hey, don't touch my trauma. I earned that." Another shouted, "We've had worse. Middle school." The Mind Cleavers fled the prison in terror. Vurak had seen enough. "They aren't fighting back like soldiers," he whispered. "They're fighting back like something more dangerous." He turned to Zoran. "They fight back like survivors, like family, like a storm that remembers every drop of rain." He opened the comm channel to all ships. "This is Commander Vurak. Order all units, full retreat. Do not engage, do not provoke. Leave this world. Now." No one questioned him, because they had all seen the same thing. Earth had no monster to fear. Earth had made its own, and they were human. As the fleet turned away, something strange happened. From cities, villages, mountains, oceans, humans stepped outside, not to cheer, not to shout, but to watch, in silence, unbroken, defiant, not with weapons, not with hate, but with something far more terrifying. Calm, because the Zorath finally understood what Earth had tried to teach them all along. You cannot kill those who have already lived through death. You cannot break those who learn to build from the broken. You cannot conquer those who made pain into purpose and chose each other anyway. Final log from Zorath High Command. Earth is no longer a target. Do not return. Do not interfere. They are not prey. They are not war. They are survival made flesh. They are fear that learned to love. They are chaos that learned to build. They are pain that learned to sing. And if you challenge them again, you will not face a world. You will face humanity.